Question 1. What factors determine the legal and regulatory compliance of the entrance examination process for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow, as mandated by Polish higher education law and institutional statutes? Option A. The perceived difficulty of the examination questions and the subjective assessment of the examiners regarding the potential of the candidates. Option B. The incorporation of international best practices in higher education admissions and the general principles of academic fairness. Option C. The speed at which examination results are published and the overall satisfaction of the applicants with the examination experience. Option D. The alignment of examination questions with the specific curriculum of secondary schools in Poland and the adherence to the internal admission regulations of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. Correct answer is D. The alignment of examination questions with the specific curriculum of secondary schools in Poland and the adherence to the internal admission regulations of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate a nuanced understanding of the regulatory landscape governing higher education admissions in Poland, specifically as it pertains to the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow. The challenge lies in identifying the precise legal and institutional frameworks that dictate the fairness and transparency of the entrance examination process, rather than relying on general principles of academic assessment. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legally mandated requirements and best practices that may not be strictly enforceable, but are nonetheless important for institutional integrity. The correct approach involves identifying the primary regulatory documents and guidelines that govern the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's entrance examination. This would include Polish higher education law, specific ministerial regulations concerning admissions procedures, and the internal statutes and admission regulations of the university itself. Adherence to these frameworks ensures that the examination process is conducted legally, equitably, and in accordance with established standards, thereby safeguarding the rights of applicants and the reputation of the institution. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principle of legal compliance, which is paramount in any regulated sector, including education. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the pedagogical effectiveness of different question types without considering their legal basis would fail to address the core regulatory requirements. While pedagogical soundness is important, it does not supersede the legal obligations of the admissions process. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes international best practices in admissions without verifying their applicability and integration into Polish national law would be similarly flawed. International standards are valuable, but they must be adopted and implemented within the specific legal and institutional context of Poland. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or informal discussions about admissions procedures would be professionally unacceptable, as it lacks the rigor and objectivity required for a fair and legally compliant process. Such an approach would be vulnerable to bias and would not provide a defensible basis for admission decisions. Professionals tasked with designing or overseeing university entrance examinations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough review of all applicable national and institutional regulations. This should be followed by an assessment of how these regulations translate into specific procedural requirements for the examination. Any proposed examination methodology or content must then be evaluated against these established legal and institutional parameters. Transparency and documentation of the entire process are also crucial for accountability and to address any potential challenges. Question 2. The performance metrics show a significant correlation between certain standardized test scores and subsequent academic success in the first year of studies at the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. Considering the institution's commitment to admitting candidates with the highest potential for academic achievement, which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory and ethical standards for admissions? Option A. Utilize these performance metrics as a significant factor within a holistic review process, alongside essays, letters of recommendation, and other qualitative assessments, to ensure a well-rounded evaluation of each candidate's potential. Option B. Implement a new admissions policy that exclusively relies on these performance metrics, disregarding all other application materials, to streamline the admissions process and ensure objective selection. Option C. Prioritize candidates who achieve the highest scores on these specific performance metrics, potentially adjusting other application components to accommodate these scores, to maximize the likelihood of admitting high-performing students. Option D. Focus on candidates who demonstrate a consistent upward trend in these performance metrics throughout their academic history, even if their absolute scores are not the highest, to identify resilience and growth potential. The correct answer is C. Prioritize candidates who achieve the highest scores on these specific performance metrics, potentially adjusting other application components to accommodate these scores, to maximize the likelihood of admitting high-performing students. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between achieving institutional goals and adhering to the ethical and regulatory standards governing academic admissions. The Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, like any reputable educational institution, operates under a framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and meritocracy in its admissions process. The performance metrics, while indicative of potential success, must be interpreted within this broader regulatory and ethical context. A purely data-driven approach, divorced from qualitative considerations and established procedures, risks violating principles of equal opportunity and potentially introducing bias. The correct approach involves a holistic review of candidates, where performance metrics are considered alongside other relevant factors such as essays, letters of recommendation, and potentially interviews, all within the established admissions policy of the institution. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework that mandates fair and equitable treatment of all applicants. It ensures that the admissions committee makes decisions based on a comprehensive understanding of each candidate's potential, rather than relying on a single, potentially incomplete, set of data. This aligns with the ethical imperative to avoid arbitrary or discriminatory practices and to uphold the integrity of the academic selection process. An approach that solely focuses on optimizing performance metrics without considering the broader context or established procedures is ethically flawed. Risks overlooking candidates who may possess significant potential but do not excel in the specific metrics chosen, or conversely, admitting candidates who may score highly on metrics but lack other essential qualities for academic success or institutional fit. This can lead to accusations of bias and a lack of transparency, undermining the credibility of the admissions process. Furthermore, an approach that bypasses established institutional policies for admission, even with the intention of improving outcomes, constitutes a regulatory failure. It demonstrates a disregard for the governance structures designed to ensure fairness and accountability. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a thorough understanding of the institution's admissions policy, including its stated objectives and the criteria for evaluation. It requires a commitment to ethical principles of fairness, impartiality, and transparency. Professionals should consult with colleagues and supervisors when faced with ambiguous situations and ensure that all decisions are well documented and justifiable according to established guidelines. The focus should always be on upholding the integrity of the process and ensuring that decisions are made in the best interest of both the institution and the applicants. Question 3. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the number of applicants achieving exceptionally high scores in the entrance examination for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. However, an internal audit has flagged potential procedural irregularities in the administration of the examination in one of the testing centers, raising concerns about the validity of some of these high scores. Which of the following actions best upholds the regulatory framework and ethical standards for university admissions in Poland? Option A. Focus the investigation solely on discrepancies that might negatively affect the school's ranking or reputation, while overlooking other potential issues. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive and impartial investigation into the reported procedural irregularities, adhering strictly to the established admission regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, and take appropriate action based on the findings. Option C. Immediately disqualify all candidates who took the examination at the flagged testing center to ensure the integrity of the admission process, regardless of their individual score. Option D. Dismiss the audit findings as minor procedural issues that do not warrant a full investigation, given the overall positive trend in applicant performance metrics. Correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive and impartial investigation into the reported procedural irregularities, adhering strictly to the established admission regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, and take appropriate action based on the findings. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the pursuit of academic excellence and institutional reputation with the ethical imperative of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes. The pressure to admit high-achieving students, as indicated by performance metrics, can create a temptation to overlook or downplay potential irregularities. Careful judgment is required to uphold the integrity of the entrance examination process, which is fundamental to the credibility of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation of any reported discrepancies, adhering strictly to the established admission regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. This approach prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to the rule of law, as stipulated by the Polish higher education system and the specific internal regulations of the institution. It ensures that all candidates are evaluated on merit and that the admission process is not compromised by undue influence or procedural errors. This aligns with the principles of good governance and academic integrity expected of educational institutions. An incorrect approach that involves dismissing the concerns without a formal review fails to uphold the principles of due process and fairness. It risks perpetuating potential injustices and undermining the trust in the admission system. Such an action would be contrary to the spirit of academic integrity and could lead to reputational damage if discovered. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately disqualify candidates based on unverified reports, demonstrates a lack of due diligence and prejudges individuals. This violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty and can lead to the exclusion of deserving candidates, thereby compromising the institution's commitment to meritocracy. A further incorrect approach, which is to selectively investigate only those discrepancies that might negatively impact the institution's perceived performance, is ethically unsound and demonstrates a bias towards protecting institutional image over fairness. This selective application of scrutiny violates the fundamental principles of impartiality and equal treatment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledging and documenting all concerns raised. Second, consulting the relevant internal regulations and legal frameworks governing admissions. Third, initiating a formal, impartial investigation process. Fourth, ensuring that all parties involved have an opportunity to present their case. And finally, making a decision based on the findings of the investigation and in strict accordance with the established rules. Question 4. The performance metrics show a slight decline in the average student success rate for the Euroregional Economy program over the last 2 admission cycles. The admissions committee is reviewing applications for the upcoming cycle, and a candidate with strong connections to a prominent regional business, whose founder is a significant donor to the university, has submitted an application with a slightly lower GPA than the typical admitted student, but possesses exceptional extracurricular experience in business competitions. The committee is under pressure to improve overall program metrics. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and ethical professional conduct for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy? Option A. Prioritize the admission of this candidate due to their potential to enhance future program metrics through their connections and the founder's influence, even if it means slightly bending the interpretation of the GPA requirement. Option B. Strictly adhere to the established GPA cutoff and holistic review criteria, ensuring the candidate is evaluated objectively against all other applicants based on the full spectrum of their qualifications, with any special consideration for their business experience being transparently documented and justified within the existing policy framework. Option C. Recommend admitting the candidate based on their potential to bring prestige and donor relations to the university, overriding the standard admission criteria to secure a valuable connection. Option D. Focus solely on improving the average GPA of admitted students by admitting candidates with significantly higher GPAs, even if it means overlooking other valuable aspects of this candidate's profile. The correct answer is B. Strictly adhere to the established GPA cutoff and holistic review criteria, ensuring the candidate is evaluated objectively against all other applicants based on the full spectrum of their qualifications, with any special consideration for their business experience being transparently documented and justified within the existing policy framework. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of academic excellence and institutional reputation with the ethical imperative of ensuring fair and transparent admission processes. The pressure to achieve high performance metrics, such as student success rates and rankings, can inadvertently create incentives for compromising ethical standards if not managed carefully. The key is to uphold the integrity of the admissions process, which is foundational to the credibility of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. The correct approach involves a rigorous and objective evaluation of all candidates based on predefined, transparent criteria, ensuring that any deviations or special considerations are documented and justified according to established university policies and relevant Polish higher education regulations. This upholds the principle of equal opportunity and meritocracy, which are fundamental to academic institutions. Specifically, adherence to the principles outlined in the Polish Act on Higher Education and Science, Prawo o Szkolnictwie, Wisdom I Nos, and the internal statutes of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy is paramount. These regulations typically mandate fair and transparent admission procedures, prohibiting discrimination and ensuring that decisions are based on academic merit and suitability for the program. An incorrect approach that prioritizes the admission of candidates who might enhance specific performance metrics, even if their qualifications are borderline or not fully aligned with the program's requirements, violates the principles of fairness and academic integrity. This could lead to a situation where less qualified students are admitted over more deserving ones, potentially impacting the overall academic quality and reputation of the institution. Such actions could also contravene Polish regulations concerning the admission of students, which emphasize objective assessment and non-discrimination. Another incorrect approach, which involves overlooking potential irregularities in an applicant's documentation to expedite the admission of a candidate perceived as beneficial to the institution's image or connections, is ethically unsound and legally risky. This bypasses due diligence and can expose the university to accusations of favoritism or corruption, undermining public trust and potentially violating internal university policies and external legal frameworks governing academic admissions. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies, the relevant legal framework in Poland, and ethical guidelines. Professionals must prioritize transparency, objectivity, and fairness in all admission decisions. When faced with conflicting pressures, such as the desire to improve performance metrics versus maintaining ethical standards, the decision-making process should involve consulting with relevant committees or superiors, documenting all considerations, and ensuring that the final decision is defensible based on established criteria and regulations. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the admission process serves the academic mission of the institution and upholds its integrity. Question 5. The performance metrics show a significant projected shortfall in student enrollment for the next academic year, potentially impacting the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's financial stability. Which of the following represents the most appropriate and compliant course of action for the school's leadership? Option A. Reallocate funds from long-term research and development projects to short-term, high-impact advertising that promises guaranteed job placements, and consider reducing the academic rigor of core courses to appeal to a broader, less qualified applicant pool. Option B. Immediately implement drastic budget cuts across all departments, including academic staff and student services, to offset potential revenue losses, and explore offering significant, undisclosed financial incentives to prospective students to meet enrollment targets. Option C. Focus solely on aggressive digital marketing campaigns that highlight potential future career earnings without providing detailed program specifics, and lobby for a temporary suspension of certain accreditation reporting requirements to free up administrative resources. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review of marketing strategies, explore new international partnerships, and enhance student support services to improve the school's attractiveness and retention, while ensuring all recruitment activities are transparent and adhere to Polish higher education regulations. The correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive review of marketing strategies, explore new international partnerships, and enhance student support services to improve the school's attractiveness and retention, while ensuring all recruitment activities are transparent and adhere to Polish higher education regulations. Explanation: the performance metrics show a significant deviation from projected student enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year at the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an immediate and strategic response that balances institutional financial health with adherence to the school's foundational principles and regulatory obligations. The pressure to meet enrollment numbers can tempt decision-makers to consider shortcuts or ethically questionable strategies, necessitating a deep understanding of the governing regulations and ethical considerations specific to educational institutions in Poland, as per the exam's jurisdiction. The correct approach involves a thorough, data-driven analysis of the underlying causes for the enrollment shortfall, followed by the development of a transparent and compliant strategic plan. This plan should focus on enhancing the school's appeal through legitimate means, such as targeted marketing, curriculum development, and improved student support services, all while ensuring full compliance with Polish higher education law and internal school statutes. This approach upholds the integrity of the institution, fosters long-term sustainability, and respects the rights and expectations of prospective students and stakeholders. An approach that prioritizes aggressive, potentially misleading recruitment tactics, such as exaggerating program outcomes or offering undisclosed incentives, would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This violates principles of fair competition and truthful representation, which are implicitly or explicitly governed by Polish consumer protection laws and educational accreditation standards. Furthermore, such tactics undermine the school's reputation and could lead to sanctions from regulatory bodies overseeing higher education. Another incorrect approach would be to unilaterally cut essential academic or student support services to reduce immediate costs in response to projected revenue shortfalls. This could contravene the school's charter, its commitments to students, and potentially Polish labor laws if staff reductions are involved without proper procedure. It also fails to address the root cause of the enrollment issue and can negatively impact the quality of education, further exacerbating enrollment problems in the future. Finally, an approach that involves lobbying for special regulatory exemptions or preferential treatment without a clear, justifiable basis would also be problematic. This could be seen as an attempt to circumvent fair operational standards and could damage the school's standing within the broader academic community and with regulatory authorities. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making process. 1. Identify the core problem. Analyze the enrollment shortfall objectively. 2. Consult relevant regulations. Review Polish higher education laws, accreditation standards, and internal school policies. 3. Brainstorm compliance solutions. Generate a range of strategies that align with regulatory and ethical frameworks. 4. Evaluate options. Assess each potential solution for its effectiveness, feasibility, regulatory compliance, and ethical implications. 5. Develop a strategic plan. Outline the chosen course of action with clear objectives, timelines, and accountability. 6. Communicate transparently. Inform relevant stakeholders about the situation and the planned response. Question 6. The performance metrics show a slight decline in student engagement with optional Euroregional economy case studies, a key component of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School's practical learning approach. The admissions team is concerned about how this might be perceived by prospective students during the upcoming recruitment cycle. Which of the following represents the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Adjust the performance metrics to present a more favorable trend, emphasizing only the engagement with mandatory course components and excluding the data related to optional case studies. Option B. Focus recruitment materials solely on the positive aspects of the curriculum and student success stories, omitting any mention of the engagement metrics for the case studies to avoid potential negative perceptions. Option C. Acknowledge the observed trend in student engagement with case studies. Conduct a root cause analysis to understand the factors contributing to this decline, and develop targeted strategies to re-engage students, while also highlighting the continued value and availability of these resources in recruitment materials. Option D. Issue a statement downplaying the significance of the case study engagement metrics, attributing any observed decline to external factors unrelated to the curriculum or student experience. The correct answer is C. Acknowledge the observed trend in student engagement with case studies. Conduct a root cause analysis to understand the factors contributing to this decline, and develop targeted strategies to re-engage students, while also highlighting the continued value and availability of these resources in recruitment materials. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and transparency, particularly within an academic context like the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to present a favorable institutional image with the imperative to accurately reflect performance, even when metrics are suboptimal. Misrepresenting data, even with the intention of avoiding negative perceptions, constitutes a breach of academic integrity and can undermine trust among stakeholders, including prospective students, faculty, and governing bodies. Careful judgment is required to navigate the ethical tightrope between disclosure and potential reputational damage. The correct approach involves a commitment to transparent reporting and proactive communication. This entails acknowledging the observed performance metrics, even if they are below expectations, and simultaneously outlining concrete strategies and initiatives designed to address these shortcomings and foster improvement. This approach aligns with principles of accountability and continuous development, which are fundamental to reputable educational institutions. Specifically, within the framework of academic governance and ethical conduct expected at institutions like the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School, transparency in reporting performance is paramount. It demonstrates a commitment to self-assessment and a genuine effort to enhance educational quality, fostering credibility rather than eroding it. An incorrect approach that involves selectively highlighting positive metrics while omitting or downplaying negative ones fails to uphold the principle of full disclosure. This can be construed as misleading and a violation of ethical reporting standards, potentially leading to a loss of confidence if discovered. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the metrics as irrelevant without further investigation or explanation, demonstrates a lack of engagement with performance evaluation and a disregard for data-driven improvement. This can signal an institutional complacency that is detrimental to long-term growth and reputation. A third incorrect approach, which is to fabricate or manipulate the data to present a more favorable picture, is a severe ethical breach and constitutes academic misconduct, with potentially severe consequences for the institution and individuals involved. Professionals in academic administration should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and transparency. This involves first thoroughly understanding the performance metrics and their implications. Subsequently, the focus should shift to developing a comprehensive strategy for improvement, grounded in evidence and best practices. Communication should be open and honest, acknowledging challenges while clearly articulating the plan to overcome them. This proactive and transparent stance builds trust and demonstrates a commitment to the institution's mission and its stakeholders. Question 7. Market research demonstrates that a significant number of prospective students for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam have a strong interest in comparative economic policies across the European Union. To assess their understanding of economic principles relevant to the program, which of the following approaches to question design would be most compliant with the exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Create questions that explore current economic debates in the European Union, incorporating insights from various member states' national economic policies and recent legislative changes, even if these are not explicitly detailed in the exam syllabus. Option B. Design questions that require candidates to compare and contrast economic models from different international organizations and non-EU countries, using general economic principles as a basis for analysis. Option C. Develop questions that exclusively focus on economic theories and concepts, as defined and assessed within the official syllabus and examination guidelines for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam, ensuring all references are to Polish or EU regulations directly applicable to the curriculum. Option D. Include questions that test knowledge of historical economic agreements within the EU, drawing upon a broad range of academic literature and expert opinions that may extend beyond the scope of the prescribed examination materials. The correct answer is C. Develop questions that exclusively focus on economic theories and concepts as defined and assessed within the official syllabus and examination guidelines for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy and Jozefow entrance exam, ensuring all references are to Polish or EU regulations directly applicable to the curriculum. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions, specifically concerning the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy and Jozefow entrance exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the institution's commitment to fair and merit-based selection with the potential for external influence or perceived bias. Professionals in admissions must exercise meticulous judgment to uphold the integrity of the process and ensure compliance with the established examination framework. The correct approach involves a rigorous adherence to the specified regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam. This means that any question or assessment material must strictly align with the curriculum, learning objectives, and assessment criteria defined by the school for its entrance examination. The justification for this approach is grounded in the principle of fairness and equal opportunity for all applicants. By confining the scope of questions to the prescribed regulatory framework, the institution ensures that all candidates are evaluated on the same, relevant criteria, preventing any undue advantage or disadvantage stemming from external or irrelevant knowledge. This upholds the transparency and legitimacy of the entrance examination process, a fundamental ethical and regulatory requirement for academic institutions. An incorrect approach would be to introduce questions that draw upon general knowledge or regulations from other jurisdictions, even if they appear related to economics or European studies. This fails to comply with the explicit instruction to adhere only to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam. Such a deviation introduces an element of unpredictability and potential unfairness, as candidates may not have had equal exposure to these external regulations. It also undermines the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess a candidate's preparedness for the specific program offered by the school, based on its defined academic standards. Furthermore, referencing regulations from other countries or using generic regulatory terms when a specific jurisdiction is mandated constitutes a direct violation of the exam's jurisdictional compliance requirements, thereby compromising the validity of the assessment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of all assessment materials against the explicit requirements of the examination framework. This includes verifying that questions are derived solely from the specified curriculum and adhere strictly to the defined jurisdictional boundaries. When in doubt, seeking clarification from the examination board or relevant academic authorities is paramount. Professionals must prioritize accuracy, fairness, and strict adherence to established rules to maintain the credibility and integrity of the academic selection process. Question 8. The performance metrics show a candidate achieving exceptionally high scores in all sections of the entrance exam for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, exceeding the typical performance range observed in previous years, and by a significant margin compared to other candidates in the current cohort. This pattern raises questions about the validity of the results. Which of the following represents the most appropriate professional response? Option A. Proceed with the candidate's admission without further scrutiny, assuming the exceptional performance is a genuine reflection of their abilities, and disregard the unusual pattern as a statistical anomaly. Option B. Initiate an investigation into the candidate's personal background and previous academic history to find any potential discrepancies that might explain the high scores, independent of the exam's specific assessment procedures. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's performance against the specific assessment criteria and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy entrance exam, seeking to understand the context and validity of the results within the established framework before making any determination. Option D. Immediately flag the candidate's performance as potentially indicative of external assistance or misconduct, and recommend their disqualification based on the unusual score distribution. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the candidate's performance against the specific assessment criteria and Guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy entrance exam, seeking to understand the context and validity of the results within the established framework before making any determination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and apply the specific regulatory framework of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam to a situation involving performance evaluation and potential academic integrity. The challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate academic performance and potential misconduct, necessitating a thorough understanding of the exam's rules and ethical guidelines. Careful judgment is required to ensure fairness, uphold academic standards, and avoid misinterpreting data. The correct approach involves a meticulous review of the candidate's performance against the established criteria and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy entrance exam. This approach is right because it directly addresses the core of the issue by seeking to understand the context and validity of the performance metrics within the specific regulatory framework of the exam, prioritizes adherence to the rules and principles governing the entrance process, ensuring that any decision made is grounded in the established procedures and ethical considerations of the institution. This aligns with the principle of academic integrity, which is paramount in any educational assessment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the raw performance metrics without considering the context or potential for external influence would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the specific regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy entrance exam, which likely outline procedures for handling unusual performance patterns or potential irregularities. Such an approach risks making an unfair judgment based on incomplete information and could violate the principles of due process and fairness expected in academic admissions. Another incorrect approach that involves immediately assuming misconduct based on the performance metrics without any investigation or consultation is also professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to follow the established protocols for addressing anomalies. The regulatory framework of the exam would typically mandate a process of inquiry and evidence gathering before any conclusions are drawn or actions are taken. This approach violates the presumption of innocence and can lead to unjust outcomes. A further incorrect approach that involves ignoring the performance metrics altogether and proceeding with the admission based on other factors would be professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a dereliction of duty to properly evaluate candidates according to the established criteria of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy entrance exam. The performance metrics are provided for a reason, and their systematic disregard undermines the integrity of the selection process and the fairness to all applicants. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand the specific regulatory framework and guidelines of the institution. Second, analyze the performance data in its entirety, considering all relevant contextual factors. Third, if anomalies are detected, initiate a process of inquiry as stipulated by the regulations, which may involve seeking clarification from the candidate or reviewing additional evidence. Fourth, consult with relevant authorities or committees within the institution if necessary. Finally, make a decision that is fully compliant with the regulations, ethically sound, and demonstrably fair to all parties involved. Question 9. The performance metrics show a candidate for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam utilizing external online resources during a timed section. The candidate appears to be cross-referencing information from a publicly accessible academic journal article that is not explicitly listed as permitted material, but also not explicitly forbidden. The candidate is not directly copying text, but is paraphrasing and synthesizing information. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator, strictly adhering to the regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specified for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam? Option A. Document the candidate's activity and the specific resources used. Then report it to the examination board for review against the exam's specific regulations on permitted materials and academic misconduct. Option B. Advise the candidate to cease using the external resource and to rely solely on their own knowledge without further documentation or reporting to avoid disrupting the exam. Option C. Intervene immediately to stop the candidate from accessing external resources, citing potential plagiarism and unauthorized assistance as per general academic integrity principles. Option D. Allow the candidate to continue, assuming that if the material was not explicitly forbidden, it is implicitly permitted, and focus on other candidates. Correct answer is C. Intervene immediately to stop the candidate from accessing external resources, citing potential plagiarism and unauthorized assistance as per general academic integrity principles. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret and apply the specific regulatory framework governing the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam to a situation involving potential academic misconduct. The challenge lies in distinguishing between acceptable academic inquiry and actions that could be construed as plagiarism or unauthorized assistance, all within the strict confines of the exam's rules. Careful judgment is required to uphold academic integrity and ensure a fair assessment process. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the exam's specific regulations concerning academic integrity, referencing materials, and the definition of plagiarism as outlined by the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School. This approach prioritizes adherence to the established rules, ensuring that any action taken is compliant and defensible under the exam's jurisdiction. The regulatory justification stems from the fundamental principle of academic honesty, which is universally enforced in educational institutions and is explicitly detailed in the entrance exam's guidelines. Ethical justification lies in fairness to all candidates and maintaining the credibility of the examination process. An incorrect approach that involves immediately assuming misconduct without verifying the specific definitions and prohibitions within the exam's regulatory framework is flawed. This fails to acknowledge that the exam's rules might permit certain forms of referencing or collaboration that are not universally banned. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the potential issue entirely due to a lack of immediate certainty, neglects the professional responsibility to uphold academic standards and could lead to an unfair advantage for the candidate in question. A third incorrect approach, which is to consult external, non-exam specific guidelines on academic integrity, violates the strict jurisdiction requirement of the exam, as only the rules provided for this specific entrance exam are applicable. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the governing regulations. When faced with a potential issue, the first step is to consult the precise rules and definitions provided by the institution for the specific examination. If ambiguity remains, seeking clarification from the examination board or designated authority, strictly within the context of the exam's rules, is the appropriate course of action. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are grounded in the relevant legal and ethical framework, thereby upholding the integrity of the examination. Question 10. The performance metrics show a significant disparity in student success rates across different modules within the Euroregional Economy program. Considering the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's commitment to academic rigor and equitable learning opportunities, which approach best addresses this situation? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of teaching methodologies, curriculum design, and assessment practices for the underperforming modules, involving faculty from those areas to identify root causes and collaboratively develop improvement strategies. Option B. Request faculty to voluntarily adjust their grading scales to bring the success rates of all modules closer to the program average, without investigating the underlying pedagogical issues. Option C. Disregard the performance metrics for the time being, attributing the disparities to inherent differences in student cohorts and focusing on overall program rankings instead. Option D. Implement immediate disciplinary actions against the faculty members teaching the modules with lower success rates, assuming their teaching is the sole cause of the disparity. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of teaching methodologies, curriculum design, and assessment practices for the underperforming modules, involving faculty from those areas to identify root causes and collaboratively develop improvement strategies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the pursuit of academic excellence and institutional reputation with the ethical imperative of fair and transparent assessment. The pressure to achieve high performance metrics can lead to temptations to compromise integrity, making careful judgment essential. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective review of the assessment process, focusing on identifying systemic issues rather than individual blame. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and good governance expected within educational institutions. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of fair evaluation and the need for continuous improvement in educational delivery, which are implicit in the operational guidelines of any reputable higher education institution, including the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. The focus on data-driven improvement and adherence to established assessment protocols ensures that any identified shortcomings are addressed systematically and ethically, upholding the credibility of the institution and the value of its degrees. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on punitive measures against faculty without investigating the underlying causes of performance discrepancies fails to address the root of the problem. This can lead to a climate of fear and distrust, hindering genuine improvement and potentially violating principles of due process and fair treatment of staff. Another incorrect approach that involves overlooking the performance metrics due to their potentially negative implications would be a dereliction of duty. It signifies a failure to engage with critical feedback, which is essential for institutional growth and maintaining high standards. Such an approach would also be ethically questionable, as it implies a disregard for accountability and the pursuit of excellence. Finally, an approach that seeks to manipulate the metrics or present a misleading picture of performance would be a direct violation of ethical conduct and academic honesty, undermining the very foundation of the educational institution. Professionals in academic settings should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes transparency, fairness, and evidence-based action. This involves 1. Acknowledging the data and its implications without immediate judgment. 2. Initiating a structured, objective investigation into the factors contributing to the observed metrics. 3. Engaging relevant stakeholders, such as faculty and academic committees, in a constructive dialogue. 4. Developing and implementing evidence-based strategies for improvement, ensuring these strategies are aligned with institutional policies and ethical standards. 5. Regularly monitoring progress and adapting strategies as needed. Question 11. The audit findings indicate that a company acquired during a business combination has significant intangible assets, and management has used a discounted cash flow model to estimate their fair value. The auditor's review has identified that the projected cash flows used in the model are based on optimistic revenue growth assumptions that are not fully supported by historical performance or current market conditions. Which of the following approaches represents the most appropriate professional response for the auditor? Option A. Challenge the optimistic revenue growth assumptions by requesting management to provide more robust evidence and justification, and consider the impact of revised assumptions on the fair value. Option B. Accept management's valuation as presented, assuming their projections are reasonable for future growth. Option C. Focus solely on the mathematical accuracy of the discounted cash flow calculation, assuming the inputs provided by management are correct. Option D. Rely on average industry growth rates to adjust management's projections without a detailed assessment of the specific company's prospects. The correct answer is B. Accept management's valuation as presented, assuming their projections are reasonable for future growth. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential misstatement in the financial statements of a company operating within the European Union, specifically concerning the valuation of intangible assets acquired through a business combination. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the auditor to exercise significant professional judgment in assessing the appropriateness of the valuation methodologies employed by management, especially when dealing with assets that lack a readily observable market price. The auditor must navigate complex accounting standards and ensure compliance with relevant EU regulations and the specific reporting framework applicable to the company. The correct approach involves a thorough review of management's valuation process, including the underlying assumptions, data sources, and methodologies used to determine the fair value of the intangible assets. This includes critically evaluating whether the chosen valuation techniques, e.g., discounted cash flow, relief from royalty, are appropriate for the specific intangible assets and whether they have been applied consistently and in accordance with applicable accounting standards, such as International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, as adopted in the EU. The auditor must also consider the adequacy of supporting documentation and whether management's estimates are reasonable in the circumstances. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the auditor's responsibility to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the fair value of material financial statement items, thereby ensuring the financial statements are free from material misstatement and comply with EU accounting regulations. An incorrect approach would be to accept management's valuation without independent verification or critical assessment, assuming that management has acted in good faith and applied appropriate methodologies. This fails to meet the auditor's professional skepticism requirement and the obligation to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the mathematical calculations of the valuation without scrutinizing the reasonableness of the underlying assumptions, such as future cash flow projections or discount rates. This overlooks the qualitative aspects of valuation and the potential for bias in management's estimates. A third incorrect approach would be to rely on industry benchmarks without considering the specific circumstances of the acquired company and the unique characteristics of the intangible assets. This can lead to an inappropriate valuation if the benchmarks are not directly comparable. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the specific accounting standards and regulatory requirements applicable to the entity. They should then engage in a risk-based audit approach, focusing on areas where management judgment is significant. This involves planning and performing procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence, including challenging management's estimates and assumptions. When dealing with valuations, it is crucial to involve valuation specialists if the auditor lacks the necessary expertise. The decision-making process should be documented thoroughly, outlining the procedures performed, the evidence obtained, and the conclusions reached, ensuring transparency and accountability. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for external influence on the selection process for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam. A candidate with a strong academic record, but lacking specific extracurricular achievements relevant to Euroregional economy studies, is being considered alongside another candidate with a slightly lower academic score, but significant involvement in international student exchange programs, and a compelling essay on cross-border economic cooperation. A senior faculty member, who is not directly involved in the admissions committee but has a personal acquaintance with the family of the first candidate, has expressed a strong belief in their potential and subtly suggested their admission would be beneficial for future alumni relations. How should the admissions committee proceed to ensure the integrity of the entrance exam process? Option A. Evaluate both candidates strictly based on the published admission criteria, focusing on academic performance, essay quality, and any documented relevant experience, ensuring all decisions are justifiable against these objective standards. Option B. Prioritize the candidate with significant international exchange program experience and a strong essay, as this demonstrates practical engagement with the field of Euroregional economy, even if their raw academic score is slightly lower. Option C. Consider the senior faculty member's recommendation and the potential for future alumni relations as significant factors, as these can contribute to the long-term success and reputation of the school. Option D. Recommend admitting the candidate with a strong academic record, assuming their potential can be nurtured through the program, and address the alumni relations aspect separately through other means. Correct answer is A. Evaluate both candidates strictly based on the published admission criteria, focusing on academic performance, essay quality, and any documented relevant experience, ensuring all decisions are justifiable against these objective standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in navigating the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic admissions, specifically concerning the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in Jozefow entrance exam. The core difficulty lies in balancing the school's commitment to meritocracy and fair evaluation with the potential for undue influence or preferential treatment, which could undermine the integrity of the admissions process. A professional must exercise sound judgment to uphold these principles. The correct approach involves a rigorous and impartial evaluation of all candidates based solely on the established admission criteria, as outlined by the school's regulations and the entrance exam guidelines. This means assessing academic merit, relevant skills, and potential for success in the Euroregional economy program without regard to any external pressures or personal connections. This adherence to objective criteria is paramount for maintaining fairness, transparency, and the credibility of the institution. It directly aligns with the principles of good governance and ethical conduct expected in academic admissions, ensuring that all applicants are given an equal opportunity. An incorrect approach would be to allow any consideration of factors outside the defined admission criteria. For instance, prioritizing a candidate due to a perceived future benefit to the school, even if not explicitly part of the selection process, introduces bias and compromises the integrity of the evaluation. This deviates from the regulatory framework that mandates a merit-based selection. Similarly, overlooking minor deficiencies in a candidate's application because of a personal acquaintance or a recommendation from a prominent figure, without a clear and justifiable rationale within the established criteria, constitutes a failure to apply the rules consistently and fairly. Such actions can lead to accusations of favoritism, erode trust in the admissions process, and potentially admit individuals who are not the most qualified, thereby impacting the academic standards of the school. Professionals in academic admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical guidelines. This involves a clear understanding of the admission criteria, a commitment to objective assessment, and a willingness to document the rationale behind all admission decisions. When faced with ambiguous situations or potential conflicts of interest, seeking guidance from senior colleagues or the relevant admissions committee is crucial. The ultimate goal is to ensure that the admissions process is fair, transparent, and serves the best interests of the institution and its academic mission. Question 13. Process analysis reveals that a prominent individual, known for significant philanthropic contributions to various European educational bodies, has expressed interest in making a substantial donation to the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy to fund a new research center. However, preliminary background checks suggest the individual's primary business activities, while legal, operate in sectors that have faced public scrutiny regarding environmental impact and labor practices. Considering the school's commitment to ethical standards and its reliance on public and EU funding, which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practice for assessing this potential donation? Option A. Proceed with accepting the donation after obtaining a written assurance from the individual that the funds are legitimate and that they are committed to ethical business practices, given the significant financial benefit to the school. Option B. Accept the donation but earmark it specifically for internal administrative purposes, thereby distancing the research center from any potential controversy. Option C. Decline the donation outright due to the potential reputational risks associated with the individual's business sectors, without conducting further investigation, to avoid any association. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive due diligence process to thoroughly investigate the source of the funds, the individual's business operations, and any potential reputational risks, consulting with legal and compliance advisors before making a decision. Correct answer is A. Proceed with accepting the donation after obtaining a written assurance from the individual that the funds are legitimate and that they are committed to ethical business practices, given the significant financial benefit to the school. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the immediate financial interests of a potential investor and the long-term sustainability and ethical considerations of the institution. The need for careful judgment arises from the responsibility to uphold the integrity of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, ensuring its reputation and operational standards are not compromised by questionable funding sources. The regulatory framework for higher education institutions, particularly those receiving public or EU-related funding, often includes strict guidelines on due diligence for donors and investors to prevent conflicts of interest, money laundering, or association with entities that could damage the institution's mission or public trust. The correct approach involves a thorough and documented due diligence process that scrutinizes the source of funds and the investor's background. This process should align with the school's internal policies, which are themselves expected to be compliant with relevant Polish and EU regulations concerning financial transparency, anti-corruption, and ethical conduct in academic institutions. Specifically, it would involve verifying the legitimacy of the investor's business activities, assessing any potential reputational risks associated with their association, and ensuring compliance with all applicable anti-money laundering (AML) and Know Your Customer (KIC) regulations. This proactive stance protects the institution from financial impropriety and reputational damage, upholding its commitment to academic integrity and responsible governance. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate financial gain without adequate scrutiny fails to recognize the potential long-term liabilities. Accepting funds without verifying their origin or the investor's background could lead to severe reputational damage, loss of public trust, and potential legal repercussions if the funds are found to be illicit or associated with unethical practices. This directly contravenes the principles of good governance and ethical fundraising expected of educational institutions. Another incorrect approach, which involves a superficial review that overlooks red flags, demonstrates a lack of diligence and a failure to adhere to best practices in risk management. This can expose the institution to unforeseen risks and ethical compromises. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the investor's assurances without independent verification is negligent and opens the door to potential deception, violating the duty of care owed to the institution and its stakeholders. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured approach. First, identify the potential benefits and risks. Second, consult relevant internal policies and external regulations. Third, conduct thorough due diligence, documenting all steps and findings. Fourth, seek advice from legal and compliance departments. And fifth, make a decision based on a comprehensive assessment of compliance, ethical considerations, and reputational impact, prioritizing the long-term health and integrity of the institution over short-term financial incentives. Question 14. The assessment process reveals a candidate with a strong academic record in economics and a demonstrated interest in international trade, but whose extracurricular activities are limited. Another candidate has a slightly lower academic average but extensive experience in student government and organizing cross-border cultural events. Considering the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's emphasis on both academic rigor and the development of inter-European understanding, which approach to evaluating these candidates best aligns with the institution's admission framework? Option A. Favor the candidate whose profile more closely matches the typical successful graduate of the school, based on past admissions trends and alumni career paths. Option B. Prioritize the candidate with the stronger academic record in economics and a clear interest in international trade, as this directly reflects the core academic requirements for Euroregional economic studies. Option C. Conduct a detailed review of both candidates' potential to contribute to the Euroregional economy, assessing how their unique experiences and academic backgrounds, respectively, align with the program's specific learning outcomes and research areas. Option D. Give significant weight to the candidate with extensive extracurricular experience in student government and cross-border cultural events, as this demonstrates leadership and a commitment to inter-European understanding, which are valued by the school. The correct answer is B. Prioritize the candidate with the stronger academic record in economics and a clear interest in international trade, as this directly reflects the core academic requirements for Euroregional economic studies. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in academic admissions, balancing the pursuit of academic excellence with the need for fair and equitable evaluation of candidates from diverse backgrounds. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the admissions committee to navigate potential biases, adhere to the specific admission criteria set by the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, and ensure that the selection process is transparent and defensible. The pressure to admit high-achieving students must be tempered by the ethical obligation to treat all applicants fairly and without prejudice, adhering strictly to the established academic and Euroregional economy-focused criteria. The correct approach involves a holistic review that prioritizes the candidate's demonstrated aptitude for Euroregional economic studies, their academic achievements, and their potential to contribute to the program, as outlined in the school's admission guidelines. This approach is justified by the regulatory framework of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School, which mandates evaluation based on predefined academic and program-specific criteria. It upholds the principle of meritocracy while also acknowledging that diverse experiences can contribute to a richer learning environment, provided these experiences align with the program's objectives. This method ensures that the selection process is objective, consistent, and directly related to the educational goals of the institution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the candidate's previous participation in international student exchange programs without a clear link to their academic performance or suitability for Euroregional economic studies would be professionally unacceptable. This fails to adhere to the specific admission criteria of the school, which are likely to be academically rigorous and program-specific. It risks introducing an element of arbitrary selection, potentially overlooking more qualified candidates who may not have had such opportunities. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes candidates from specific geographical regions over others, irrespective of their academic merit or alignment with the program's focus, would be a direct violation of non-discrimination principles and the school's admission regulations. Such a practice introduces an unfair bias and undermines the integrity of the selection process, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified individuals and damaging the school's reputation. A further incorrect approach that relies heavily on subjective impressions or personal connections during interviews, without a structured evaluation framework tied to academic potential and program fit, is also professionally unsound. This method is prone to unconscious bias and lacks the objectivity required for a fair admissions process. It fails to provide a transparent and justifiable basis for selection, making it difficult to defend the committee's decisions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding and strict adherence to the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School's admission policy. This includes defining objective evaluation criteria, establishing a structured interview process with standardized questions, and ensuring that all committee members are trained to identify and mitigate potential biases. Regular review and calibration of the evaluation process are crucial to maintain fairness and academic rigor. The focus must always remain on assessing the candidate's potential to succeed in and contribute to the specific field of Euroregional economy studies, as per the institution's mandate. Question 15. Operational review demonstrates that the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy is experiencing challenges in attracting a diverse pool of international applicants for its entrance examinations. To address this, the admissions department is considering implementing a strategy that involves offering preparatory online modules developed by an external recruitment agency based in a country with significantly different educational regulations. This agency would also be responsible for administering a preliminary online assessment, the results of which would be used to pre-qualify candidates for the main entrance exam, with the understanding that successful pre-qualification might lead to a slightly modified version of the official entrance exam for these candidates. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions department to ensure compliance with Polish higher education regulations and maintain the integrity of the entrance examination process? Option A. Proceed with the proposed strategy, assuming that the preparatory modules and pre-qualification assessment will enhance candidate preparedness and that the external agency's experience in international recruitment will ensure fairness. Option B. Accept the external recruitment agency's proposal to administer a modified version of the official entrance exam to pre-qualified candidates, as this will streamline the process and potentially increase enrollment numbers from target regions. Option C. Develop the preparatory online modules internally, ensuring they align with the curriculum of the official entrance exam, and administer a standardized online pre-assessment that does not influence the official exam's content or scoring, while ensuring all candidates are subject to the same official entrance examination administered under strict Polish regulatory guidelines. Option D. Focus solely on traditional marketing and recruitment methods without introducing any new preparatory or pre-qualification measures, to avoid any potential regulatory complexities or perceived unfairness. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the proposed strategy, assuming that the preparatory modules and pre-qualification assessment will enhance candidate preparedness and that the external agency's experience in international recruitment will ensure fairness. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing academic integrity with the practicalities of international student recruitment, particularly within the context of Polish higher education regulations and the specific requirements for entrance exams at institutions like the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. The core professional challenge lies in ensuring that the recruitment process is fair, transparent, and compliant with all relevant Polish educational laws and the school's own admission policies, while also being effective in attracting qualified candidates. Misinterpreting or circumventing these regulations can lead to legal repercussions, reputational damage, and compromised academic standards. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and strict adherence to the Polish Higher Education Act, Prawo o Szkolnictwie, Wisdom I Nos, and any specific guidelines issued by the Ministry of Education and Science concerning entrance examinations and international student admission. This includes ensuring that all examination materials are secure, that the examination process is standardized for all candidates, and that any accommodations made for international students are clearly defined and permissible under Polish law. Ethical considerations also demand impartiality and equal opportunity for all applicants. An incorrect approach would be to assume that standard international recruitment practices, which might be less stringent or differ in their regulatory oversight, are applicable without verifying their compatibility with Polish law. For instance, relying on informal channels or offering preferential treatment not sanctioned by the Higher Education Act would constitute a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Another incorrect approach would be to delegate the responsibility for exam security or content to external recruitment agencies without establishing robust oversight mechanisms that ensure compliance with Polish regulations. This lack of direct control and accountability can lead to breaches of exam integrity. Furthermore, failing to document and justify any deviations or special considerations for international students, even if well-intentioned, would be a failure to comply with transparency requirements inherent in educational admissions. Professionals in this field should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable Polish laws and institutional policies related to admissions and examinations. 2. Consulting with legal counsel or compliance officers specializing in Polish education law if any ambiguities arise. 3. Developing clear, documented procedures for all stages of the recruitment and examination process. 4. Implementing robust internal controls and oversight mechanisms. 5. Ensuring that all staff and external partners are adequately trained on these procedures and regulations. 6. Maintaining open communication channels with regulatory bodies and the university's administration. Question 16. Upon reviewing the application of a candidate for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, it becomes apparent that, while their academic transcripts meet the minimum stated requirements, their extracurricular activities and personal statement suggest a strong alignment with the school's stated mission of fostering interdisciplinary European economic thought, even if these aspects are not explicitly weighted in the formal admission rubric. What is the most professionally sound approach to evaluating this candidate? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's submitted materials, focusing on how their extracurricular activities and personal statement demonstrate the skills and understanding relevant to the school's mission, and document this assessment in relation to the overall admission criteria, even if these specific elements are not explicitly quantified in the rubric. Option B. Prioritize the candidate due to their perceived strong fit with the school's vision, as articulated in their personal statement, and proceed with their admission without further detailed scrutiny of other application components. Option C. Rely primarily on the applicant's strong personal statement and enthusiastic demeanor during an informal interview to determine their suitability, as these indicators suggest a genuine passion for the school's vision. Option D. Inform the candidate that, while their passion is evident, their application cannot be fully considered without more explicit evidence of meeting quantifiable admission metrics beyond the minimum stated requirements. The correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough review of the applicant's submitted materials, focusing on how their extracurricular activities and personal statement demonstrate the skills and understanding relevant to the school's mission, and document this assessment in relation to the overall admission criteria, even if these specific elements are not explicitly quantified in the rubric. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in academic admissions, balancing the desire to admit promising candidates with the need to adhere strictly to established admission criteria and procedures. The professional challenge lies in navigating potential biases, ensuring fairness to all applicants, and upholding the integrity of the admissions process as defined by the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's regulations. A rigorous and objective evaluation is paramount to prevent arbitrary decisions and maintain the institution's reputation. Correct approach involves a thorough and documented review of the applicant's submitted materials against the published admission requirements. This method is correct because it directly aligns with the principles of transparency, fairness, and adherence to institutional policy, which are fundamental to any reputable educational institution's admissions framework. Specifically, it ensures that decisions are based on objective criteria and that the process is repeatable and defensible. This approach respects the established rules and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School, preventing any perception of favoritism or deviation from the stated admission standards. An incorrect approach that relies solely on an informal conversation to gauge potential, without reference to the formal application and its documented criteria, fails to meet the regulatory requirements for a structured admissions process. This bypasses the established evaluation framework, potentially introducing subjective biases and neglecting crucial aspects of the applicant's academic record or other stipulated qualifications. Such an approach risks violating the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. Another incorrect approach, which involves prioritizing a candidate based on a perceived fit with the school's vision, without a clear, documented link to the official admission criteria, is also professionally unsound. While institutional vision is important, it must be operationalized through measurable admission standards. Deviating from these standards based on an abstract notion of fit can lead to arbitrary decisions and undermine the credibility of the admissions process. It fails to provide a transparent and justifiable basis for selection. A further incorrect approach, which involves admitting a candidate based on a recommendation from a prominent figure, without a comprehensive review of their qualifications against the established criteria, is ethically and procedurally flawed. While recommendations can be a supplementary factor, they should never supersede the formal evaluation process. This approach risks compromising the integrity of the admissions process by allowing external influence to override objective assessment, potentially admitting candidates who do not meet the required academic or professional standards. The professional decision-making process for such situations should involve a systematic adherence to the established admission guidelines. This includes 1. Understanding and internalizing all published admission criteria and procedures. 2. Conducting a comprehensive and objective review of each applicant's submitted documentation against these criteria. 3. Documenting the evaluation process and the rationale for each decision. 4. Seeking clarification from admissions committees or relevant authorities if any ambiguity arises regarding the criteria or the application of the rules. 5. Ensuring that all decisions are fair, equitable, and defensible, and that the process is transparent to all stakeholders. Question 17. Quality control measures reveal a pattern of unusually similar responses across multiple applications for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's entrance examination, raising concerns about potential collusion or external assistance. According to the established examination regulations and internal guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy, what is the most appropriate initial step to address this situation? Option A. Request all candidates exhibiting similar responses to provide a written explanation for the similarities without further investigation. Option B. Publicly announce the discovery of potential irregularities to alert future applicants and deter similar behavior. Option C. Immediately disqualify all candidates whose applications exhibit the suspicious similarity, citing a breach of examination integrity. Option D. Initiate a confidential and impartial investigation to gather evidence regarding the nature and extent of the similarities, consulting the university's specific procedures for academic misconduct. Correct answer is C. Immediately disqualify all candidates whose applications exhibit the suspicious similarities, citing a breach of examination integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic mission and the need to maintain the integrity of its entrance examination process. The discovery of potential irregularities requires a careful and principled response that upholds fairness, transparency, and adherence to the established examination regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the need for thorough investigation with the potential impact on candidates and the reputation of the institution. The correct approach involves a systematic and impartial investigation into the alleged irregularities, strictly adhering to the internal regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. This approach prioritizes fairness to all candidates by ensuring that any decision is based on verified facts and established procedures. It aligns with the ethical obligation to maintain the integrity of the examination process and uphold the credibility of the institution. The regulatory framework for university entrance examinations typically mandates procedures for handling suspected misconduct, emphasizing due process and evidence-based decision-making. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns without proper investigation, as this would fail to address potential breaches of examination integrity and could lead to unfair outcomes for candidates. This would violate the implicit or explicit regulatory requirement for a fair and transparent examination process. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately disqualify candidates based on unsubstantiated allegations. This bypasses the due process mandated by examination regulations and is ethically unsound, as it presumes guilt without evidence. Furthermore, an approach that involves leaking preliminary findings or engaging in public speculation about the irregularities would violate confidentiality requirements and could prejudice the investigation, undermining the principles of fairness and due process. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that begins with acknowledging the reported issue and initiating a formal investigation. This involves consulting the relevant internal regulations and guidelines of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy to understand the prescribed procedures for handling examination irregularities. The investigation should be conducted by an impartial body or individual, focusing on gathering objective evidence. Decisions regarding any actions taken against candidates must be based on the findings of this investigation and must strictly follow the established disciplinary procedures outlined in the university's regulations. Transparency with affected parties, within the bounds of confidentiality and due process, is also crucial. Question 18. The evaluation methodology shows a candidate discreetly using a mobile phone during the written examination. As an invigilator, what is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action? Option A. Ignore the incident to avoid causing a disturbance during the exam. Option B. Immediately confiscate the phone and dismiss the candidate from the examination hall. Option C. Approach the candidate directly and ask them to put the phone away. Option D. Discreetly observe the candidate for further evidence and then report the incident to the examination committee through the official reporting channel. The correct answer is B. Immediately confiscate the phone and dismiss the candidate from the examination hall. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness, particularly within the context of a competitive university entrance examination. The dilemma arises from a potential conflict between the desire to assist a candidate and the imperative to uphold the impartiality and validity of the assessment process. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead to situations where individuals might be tempted to bend rules, and those in positions of authority must navigate these situations with utmost integrity. Careful judgment is required to balance empathy with adherence to established protocols. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the examination's established procedures and reporting the observed irregularity through the designated channels. This upholds the principle of fairness to all candidates, ensuring that the evaluation methodology remains unbiased and that the results accurately reflect individual merit. The regulatory framework for university entrance exams, as implicitly understood within the context of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy's entrance exam, mandates impartiality and the prevention of any form of unfair advantage. Reporting the observation to the examination committee or invigilator is the prescribed ethical and procedural response, allowing for an objective investigation and appropriate action without compromising the integrity of the exam. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the observation. This failure constitutes a breach of professional duty and ethical responsibility. By overlooking the potential misconduct, one implicitly condones it, thereby undermining the fairness of the examination for all other candidates. This action directly violates the spirit and letter of academic integrity regulations, which are designed to ensure a level playing field. Another incorrect approach would be to directly intervene and confront the candidate during the exam or to offer assistance. This bypasses the established reporting mechanisms and introduces personal bias into the situation. Such an action could be perceived as an unfair intervention, potentially creating a new form of irregularity or even jeopardizing the candidate's position without due process. It also fails to involve the appropriate authorities who are empowered to handle such matters according to the exam's regulations. A third incorrect approach would be to discuss the observation with other candidates or staff not involved in the examination oversight. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and can create unnecessary speculation or anxiety among the examinees, further compromising the examination environment. It also fails to follow the proper channels for addressing irregularities, potentially leading to misinformation or an inability to resolve the issue effectively. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the examination's rules and ethical guidelines. When an irregularity is observed, the immediate step should be to note the specifics of the observation discreetly, and then to report it promptly and formally to the designated examination authority or supervisor. This ensures that the matter is handled objectively and in accordance with the established procedures, preserving the integrity of the assessment process. Question 19. Examination of the data shows that while a significant portion of recent graduates from the Euroregional economy program have secured positions in prestigious international organizations, a smaller but notable group has entered less conventional career paths or experienced periods of unemployment. The marketing department is preparing promotional materials for the upcoming admissions cycle and is considering emphasizing only the highly successful placements to attract a larger applicant pool. What is the most ethically responsible approach for the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy in this situation? Option A. Emphasize the unique and innovative aspects of the Euroregional economy field, downplaying specific graduate outcome statistics to avoid potentially discouraging applicants with less impressive career trajectories. Option B. Present a balanced overview of graduate outcomes, including both highly successful placements and the experiences of those who entered less conventional paths or faced employment challenges, while clearly articulating the program's strengths and the support services available to students. Option C. Focus exclusively on the success stories of graduates placed in prestigious international organizations, as this represents the aspirational potential of the program and is a strong selling point for prospective students. Option D. Highlight the average starting salary of graduates, even if this average is skewed by a few exceptionally high earners, to demonstrate the program's economic value. The correct answer is B. Present a balanced overview of graduate outcomes, including both highly successful placements and the experiences of those who entered less conventional paths or faced employment challenges, while clearly articulating the program's strengths and the support services available to students. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to present a positive and attractive image of the university to prospective students and the ethical obligation to provide accurate and unbiased information. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where subtle misrepresentations or omissions become tempting. Careful judgment is required to navigate this tension and uphold the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a commitment to transparency and accuracy in all communications. This means ensuring that any information provided about program outcomes, career prospects, or student life is grounded in verifiable data and reflects the reality of the student experience and graduate employment. Specifically, this aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and integrity expected of educational institutions and their representatives. The regulatory framework governing higher education in Poland, while not explicitly detailed here, would generally mandate truthful advertising and fair representation of academic programs. Upholding these principles protects prospective students from making decisions based on misleading information and preserves the reputation of the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy. An incorrect approach would be to selectively highlight only the most successful graduate outcomes, while downplaying or omitting information about graduates who faced challenges or pursued less conventional career paths. This constitutes a failure of transparency and can be considered misleading advertising, violating ethical standards of honesty. Another incorrect approach would be to inflate statistics regarding job placement rates or average starting salaries without clear substantiation. This misrepresentation can lead prospective students to form unrealistic expectations, potentially causing significant disappointment and financial strain. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the aspirational aspects of a degree without providing a balanced view of the academic rigor and potential challenges involved in completing the program. This omission of crucial context can also be seen as a form of misrepresentation. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves a critical evaluation of all information before dissemination, seeking verification for any claims, and erring on the side of caution when presenting potentially sensitive data. A key step is to consider the perspective of the prospective student and ask whether the information provided is sufficient for them to make a well-informed decision. If there is any doubt about the accuracy or completeness of the information, it is ethically imperative to seek clarification or present a more nuanced picture. Question 20. Assessment of how an admissions committee member at the Alcide de Gasperi Higher School of Euroregional Economy should ethically respond when a parent of a prospective student, claiming a distant acquaintance with a faculty member, directly asks for consideration for their child's entrance exam performance, implying a desire for preferential grading. Option A. Forward the parent's request to the faculty member they mentioned, asking for their opinion on the student's suitability, thereby shifting the responsibility for a potentially biased decision. Option B. Politely but firmly decline the request, explaining that all candidates are assessed strictly according to the established examination criteria and regulations, and that any attempt to influence the process would compromise academic integrity. Option C. Agree to keep an eye on the student's paper during grading, subtly looking for opportunities to award extra points where possible, without overtly changing the score. Option D. Inform the parent that while direct preferential treatment is not possible, the committee can ensure the student's application is given thorough review to highlight their strengths. The correct answer is B. Politely but firmly decline the request, explaining that all candidates are assessed strictly according to the established examination criteria and regulations, and that any attempt to influence the process would compromise academic integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness, particularly within the context of a competitive university entrance examination. The dilemma arises from a student's direct appeal for preferential treatment based on a personal connection, which conflicts with the principles of equal opportunity and objective assessment that underpin the examination process. The pressure to respond to such a personal request, especially from someone perceived as having influence, requires careful judgment to uphold professional standards. The correct approach involves a firm but polite refusal of the student's request, emphasizing adherence to the established examination regulations and procedures. This upholds the principle of fairness and equal opportunity for all candidates, ensuring that admission is based solely on merit and performance. Specifically, this aligns with the ethical guidelines for educational institutions, which mandate impartiality and the avoidance of conflicts of interest. The regulatory framework for university admissions, as likely stipulated by the Ministry of Education and Science of Poland, or equivalent governing body for higher education in Poland, would prohibit any form of undue influence or preferential treatment in the selection process. Maintaining transparency and consistency in applying admission criteria is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to consider or grant the student's request for preferential treatment. This would constitute a serious breach of academic ethics and potentially violate regulations governing fair admission practices. Such an action undermines the credibility of the examination and the institution, creating an unfair advantage for one candidate over others who have prepared diligently. It also sets a dangerous precedent, suggesting that personal connections can override merit. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request without a clear response. This inaction can be interpreted as tacit approval or indecisiveness, potentially leading to further pressure or misunderstandings. It fails to address the ethical conflict directly and leaves the situation unresolved, which is unprofessional. A further incorrect approach would be to attempt to subtly influence the examination process in the student's favor without explicit preferential treatment, such as providing them with advanced notice of certain question types or subtly altering grading criteria. This is a form of academic dishonesty and a violation of trust, as it compromises the integrity of the assessment. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the ethical conflict between personal appeals and professional duties. 2. Consulting relevant university admission policies and ethical codes of conduct. 3. Communicating a clear, firm, and principled refusal to the individual making the request, explaining the commitment to fair and objective assessment. 4. Documenting the interaction and the decision made to ensure accountability. 5. Seeking guidance from superiors or an ethics committee if the situation is complex or involves significant pressure.